My phone pinged as I was signing Leo out of daycare. I glanced at the screen expecting some mundane message from David, maybe about picking up dinner or asking if I'd remembered to pay the electric bill. Instead, I read words that split my world apart: moving to Spain with Jackie. I've transferred our savings to my private account. Good luck paying rent. My pen froze against the sign-out sheet. For a moment, the chatter of parents, the squeak of sneakers, even my son's voice tugging at my sleeve, all of it faded into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. Spain. Jackie's savings gone. My mind reeled, refusing to accept what my eyes had just read. "Mommy, did you bring my dinosaur snacks today?" Leo's small voice jolted me back, his innocent face oblivious to the implosion happening around him. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes, scribbled the final signature, and slipped the phone into my pocket. With fingers that trembled, I typed back 3 hollow words that masked the hurricane inside me. "Thanks for the update, Jackie," his administrative assistant. 8 years of careful planning, budgeting, scraping together every spare dollar for Leo's future, all siphoned away with one text message. Our rent, $200 was due in 3 days. My bank app confirmed the horror. The entire balance, $42,731, was gone. All that remained was $347,012 in checking. My name is Suzanne Mitchell, 37 years old, mother to a 4-year-old boy, and apparently soon-to-be ex-wife of David Mitchell, who had just abandoned us with the casual cruelty of a thief walking away from his own family. As we walked to the car, Leo asked, "Is Daddy making spaghetti tonight?" "Daddy's on a trip," I murmured, my throat tightening as I buckled him into his booster seat. "We'll have pizza instead." The lie tasted bitter, the first of what I knew would be many half-truths to shield him from his father's betrayal. Back home, Leo sat happily in front of his favorite cartoon, while I locked myself in the bedroom, calling the bank with desperate hope that maybe there had been a mistake. The representative's voice was polite, clinical, merciless. The transfer was legitimate. Nothing could be reversed. Legally, because his name was on the account, it wasn't theft. It was his right. A cold wave of panic washed over me. How would I keep a roof over our heads? How would I protect Leo when the man who promised to be our provider had gutted us instead? As if on cue, the phone rang again. It was David's mother, Beatrice. "Suzanne, what have you done?" she spat before I could even say hello. "David says you're threatening to keep Leo from him unless he pays you more alimony. I won't let you bully my son." I nearly dropped the phone. "What, Beatrice? He'd just left us. He moved to Spain. He emptied our accounts." "Don't lie to me," she snapped. "I've seen the messages. He told me everything. You're making demands. I raised a better son than that, and he won't be blackmailed." Her conviction was like a knife twisting in my gut. David hadn't just abandoned us, he was rewriting the story, painting me as the villain. And his mother believed him. Suddenly, this wasn't just about survival. This was about truth, about justice, about protecting my son from a narrative that could erase me entirely. I sat on the edge of the bed, the memories of our life together flickering like broken film reels. 9 years ago, we met at a publishing conference in New York. I was an ambitious editor. He was a charming marketer who pursued me with handwritten notes and whirlwind dates. 6 months later, we married overlooking Lake Michigan, and for a while, life felt solid. We built careers, bought a condo, had Leo. When I stepped back from full-time work to raise our son, I trusted him to shoulder the finances. But the warning signs had been there: receipts for dinners he couldn't explain, late nights at the office, his phone always face down on the table. When I found a Barcelona travel guide in his desk drawer last week, he laughed it off. "Just research," he said. I ignored the tremor in his voice, the way his eyes darted away. I should have known. Now, staring at the empty balance in our account, I realized he hadn't acted impulsively. He'd planned this escape, calculating every step, even weaponizing his mother against me. He'd left me not only broke but branded as the manipulative wife keeping a father from his child. I thought of Leo's trusting little face, his hand in mine as he asked about spaghetti. My chest ached with a mix of grief and fury. David had underestimated me. He always had. And as I sat there surrounded by the wreckage of our life, one thought blazed through the despair: I wasn't going to let him win. The next morning I woke up with a pit in my stomach so heavy it felt like it might swallow me whole. The condo that once felt safe now seemed cold, foreign, like it belonged to a stranger. I padded into the kitchen to make Leo's breakfast, my mind still replaying David's text over and over. Every word dripped with contempt. Good luck paying rent. He hadn't just abandoned us, he wanted me to fail. As I buttered toast, Leo wandered in, clutching his toy dinosaur. "Mommy, when's Daddy coming back from his trip?" My throat closed. How could I explain betrayal to a 4-year-old? "Not for a while, sweetheart," I whispered, kissing his head. "But we'll be okay." The truth was, I didn't believe that yet. I spent the morning making phone calls, lawyers, banks, even the daycare director who kindly agreed to extend Leo's tuition payment a few weeks. Each call chipped away at the illusion I could fix this quickly. David had transferred the money legally, and the lawyer explained I'd need to file for divorce in order to demand financial support. "But be prepared," she warned, "he's already building his case against you." Her words echoed what Beatrice had hurled at me the night before. David was spinning lies, framing me as a manipulative wife holding Leo hostage. And if he was already overseas, the custody battle would be even harder. My hands shook as I hung up, rage bubbling beneath my skin. He wasn't just erasing me financially, he was trying to erase me as a mother. That night, after Leo fell asleep clutching his stuffed giraffe, I opened David's old laptop, the one he'd forgotten to wipe before leaving. I shouldn't have been surprised by what I found: months of emails with Jackie detailing their affair, mocking me, even attaching photos of condos in Barcelona they were considering. And there it was, a forwarded spreadsheet of our joint accounts, each line annotated with smug comments. "She'll never notice. Easy." My vision blurred. He had plotted this betrayal for months, maybe years. He hadn't just left, he'd stolen, manipulated, orchestrated an escape where I was the villain. I printed every email, every attachment, and tucked them into a folder I labeled Truth. My heart pounded with grim satisfaction. If he wanted war, I wouldn't go in empty-handed. But what shook me most wasn't just his cruelty, it was the casual way he'd written about Leo. In one email he told Jackie, "She'll be fine with the kid. I never wanted full custody anyway. Too much work. Too much work. Our son dismissed as an inconvenience." The fury that surged through me was like nothing I'd ever felt. In that moment, the despair that had paralyzed me hardened into resolve. I wasn't just fighting for money. I wasn't just fighting for dignity. I was fighting for Leo's right to the truth, for his right to have a mother who wouldn't abandon him, who wouldn't trade him for a new life across the ocean. The next day I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. When I slid the folder across her desk, she raised her eyebrows. "This changes everything," she said, flipping through the pages. "Affair, financial misconduct, intent to abandon. This isn't just grounds for divorce, it's leverage." For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe David thought he'd written the final chapter of our story. But he had underestimated me. As I left the office, the autumn wind whipped my hair across my face. The city bustled around me, indifferent to my heartbreak, but inside I felt something stirring, a fire that had been buried under years of compromise and silence. David had chosen betrayal. I was choosing survival. And soon I would choose something more: justice. The days that followed were a blur of phone calls, paperwork, and sleepless nights. Each morning I plastered on a brave face for Leo, packing his lunch, walking him to daycare, pretending our world hadn't cracked in half. But the moment I dropped him off, I became a soldier in a war I hadn't asked for, meeting lawyers, gathering evidence, piecing together the fragments of the life David had shattered. At night, when the house grew still, I would sit at the kitchen table staring at the folder labeled Truth. The printed emails were smudged from where my tears had fallen, but they were also my weapon. His arrogance, his mocking laughter about me, his dismissal of our son, it was all there in black and white. Beatrice kept calling, leaving venomous voicemails. "You're poisoning Leo against his father," she sneered. "You always wanted David's money. Now everyone can see who you really are." Each word cut deeper, but they also hardened me. She could scream all she wanted, the truth was on my side. And someday, so would the courts. One evening, as I tucked Leo into bed, he looked up at me with wide, searching eyes. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy call me?" My heart twisted. I stroked his hair, searching for words that wouldn't crush him. "Daddy's far away right now, sweetheart. But you have me, and I'm not going anywhere." He nodded sleepily, trusting me with a faith so pure it brought tears to my eyes. I kissed his forehead and whispered a silent promise I will never let him down the way his father did. The next week, my lawyer filed the divorce petition. The papers included every damning email, every bank record, every shred of proof. He'll fight dirty, she warned, but we're ready. Sure enough, within days, David called, his voice dripping with faux concern. Suzanne, this is ridiculous. You don't have the resources to fight me. Drop it and I'll send some money for Leo. Keep pushing and you'll regret it. I almost laughed. You regret it already, I said coldly. You just don't know it yet. And I hung up before he could respond. That night I lay awake replaying our years together. The whirlwind romance, the vows by the lake, the nights I stayed up nursing Leo while David slept undisturbed. How many of those moments had he been planning his escape? How long had I been living with a stranger who saw me as disposable? The grief was heavy, but underneath it pulsed something stronger, resolve. And then unexpectedly came the first victory. Catherine, a close friend from my old publishing days, invited me to coffee. As I vented about lawyers and bills, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Suzanne, come work with us. We need an editor who actually cares. It's not glamorous, but it's stable. And it's yours if you want it. Tears welled in my eyes. For weeks I had felt powerless, reduced to a victim of David's cruelty. But here was a lifeline, proof that I could stand on my own, that I wasn't defined by his betrayal. That night I updated my resume while Leo colored dinosaurs beside me. It wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming the pieces of myself David had tried to erase. As I watched my son hum softly, crayons scattered across the table, I realized something important. David thought he had won because he left with the money, but he didn't understand that money wasn't the measure of strength. Love was, resilience was, and I had both. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was preparing, because when David finally came back, when he inevitably tried to claim what he thought still belonged to him, he would discover a truth he had never believed: I was stronger than the woman he left behind. Weeks bled into months, and slowly the raw shock began to calcify into something sharper. I found rhythm again, waking Leo, packing lunches, slipping on my work badge at Catherine's office where I proofread manuscripts and drank bitter coffee that tasted like survival. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and each paycheck was a defiant reminder David hadn't destroyed me. But beneath the surface, the war still raged. Court dates loomed. His lawyer filed motion after motion, painting me as manipulative, unstable, even unfit to raise Leo. Reading those words was like being stabbed by someone I once trusted with my life. I'd sit in the courtroom, my hands folded in my lap, while David appeared on a video screen from Spain, feigning calm, shaking his head at my antics, and every time I fought the urge to scream. Then came the day Beatrice showed up at my door. I nearly didn't answer, but her pounding was relentless. When I opened it, she swept past me into the living room, her perfume sharp, her eyes cold. "You've turned my son's life into a circus," she spat, dragging his name through court, poisoning Leo. "You'll regret this." I stood frozen for a moment, then walked calmly to the coffee table. I lifted the folder labeled Truth and slid it across the table toward her. "Read," I said quietly. Her lips curled, but curiosity won. She flipped the pages, emails, spreadsheets, photos. With each turn, the color drained from her face. By the time she reached the line where David had written, "Never wanted full custody anyway, too much work," her hands were trembling. When she finally looked up, her eyes were wet. He wrote this." "Yes," I said. My voice cracked, but my resolve didn't. "That's your son. The man you've defended while he abandoned his child." She pressed the folder shut and stood. For the first time, she didn't hurl accusations. She didn't defend him. She just whispered, "I didn't know," and walked out into the cold evening. That night, as I tucked Leo into bed, I felt something shift inside me. For so long, David's lies had defined me as the villain, the manipulator, the abandoned wife. But now cracks had appeared in his facade. Even his own mother couldn't unsee the truth. The next hearing was different. My lawyer presented the documents, formally laying them bare for the judge. David's face on the screen darkened, his charm slipping into anger. He stammered, denied, tried to shift blame, but the evidence was undeniable. When the judge looked at me and said, Full custody granted to the mother. I felt my knees weaken. Tears streamed down my face, not of sadness but of vindication. Outside the courthouse, I hugged Leo so tightly he squealed. I whispered into his hair, "We're safe now. Daddy can't take you away." But even as relief flooded me, I knew the story wasn't over. David had underestimated me once and he might try again. He still believed money equaled power. He still thought he could twist the narrative. What he didn't realize was that the woman he left behind no longer existed. In her place stood someone fiercer, someone who had walked through betrayal and found her own strength waiting on the other side. And the day he came back to face me in person, he would finally learn just how wrong he had been. The day David finally returned felt almost unreal. Months had passed since his text detonated our lives, months of rebuilding myself from the ashes he left behind. By then, Leo and I had found a fragile rhythm: morning cartoons, bedtime stories, weekends at the park. Still, when my lawyer called to say David had flown back for the final custody hearing, my hands went clammy. I sat in the courtroom, heart pounding as he walked in. Sunburned from Spain, a designer suit hanging just a little too smug on his frame, and Jackie, his mistress, hovering a few seats behind. He smiled at me like nothing had happened, like this was just another negotiation. But I wasn't the woman he had walked out on. When the judge asked for opening remarks, his lawyer painted me as vindictive, unstable, clinging to Leo as a weapon. My chest burned, but I stayed still, because I knew what was coming. My attorney rose and laid the folder of evidence on the desk. Page after page projected onto the courtroom screen: emails of David mocking me, plans for Barcelona condos, bank transfers, siphoning our savings, his cruel words about Leo. Too much work. Gasps rippled through the room. Even Jackie's face paled. David shifted, his confidence cracking. He tried to interrupt, but the judge silenced him. Every lie he had told, every mask he had worn, shattered under the weight of his own words. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't rage. I didn't beg. I simply told the truth: how I found out at daycare pickup, how he left us with nothing, how I spent nights wondering how to explain to our son why his father had vanished. My voice trembled, but I never looked away from the judge. In the end, the ruling was clear: full custody to me, financial restitution ordered, and restrictions placed on his visitation until he proved stability. David's face when the gavel struck is one I'll never forget, not just anger but disbelief. For once, his charm, his lies, his money couldn't save him. He had underestimated me for the last time. As we left the courthouse, Leo clutched my hand. He didn't understand the details, but he sensed the shift. "Mommy, are we okay now?" he asked. I knelt to his level, tears in my eyes, and whispered, "Yes, baby. We're more than okay. We're free." That night I tucked him in and sat by the window long after he fell asleep, watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky. I thought of the woman I had been, naive, trusting, willing to sacrifice myself for a man who saw me as disposable. And I thought of the woman I had become, scarred, yes, but stronger, braver, unshakable. David had gone to Spain chasing a fantasy, but he lost what truly mattered. And I, the woman he thought he could erase, had built a life from the ruins. So if you're listening to my story and you've ever been betrayed, abandoned, or told you weren't enough, remember this: sometimes the cruelest endings lead to the most powerful beginnings. If my story touched you, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more heartfelt stories and leave a comment with your own experience. Because your voice, your strength, your survival, they matter.